I spent my childhood with my head buried in books, labeled a nerd who did nothing but study. I watched as the girl I'd promised since we were kids to go to college with climbed into the passenger seat of someone else's sports car. They kissed in the rain and raced through the streets late at night, all for a so-called passionate youth that ended with them both getting expelled. I didn't have a wild senior year. I just struggled through a sea of practice exams. I won first place in the state math competition and got my acceptance letter to an Ivy League school, becoming the kid every parent wishes they had. She called me an idiot, a simp, and swore she'd never regret her choice as long as she had that rich kid. Years later, she showed up at my company's entrance, pregnant and abandoned by that jerk, asking if I'd still be willing to love her like I used to. The same classmates who once mocked me sighed about how the tables had turned. I just calmly set down my cup and said I'd never loved her. After all, people who live out such different youths were never meant to walk the same path to the end. The girl next door, the one I'd planned on going to college with since we were kids, fell for the spoiled son of a wealthy family. I urged her not to give up on her dreams, to focus on her SATs, but she just called me an idiot and a simp. They kissed in the rain and went on reckless late-night motorcycle rides, which eventually got them both expelled. After graduation, I got into my dream university, while the rich kid's family sent him overseas to study. But she regretted it later. She came to me, pregnant, and asked if I could still love her like I did before. Ava Hayes was caught skipping class again, and now she was getting chewed out in the principal's office. "Isn't that the third time this week?" A classmate, Leo, whispered, leaning against the window to gossip with his friend. I was deep into a math problem, my pen never stopping, my eyes never leaving the page. She made her bed. Now she has to lie in it. Leo scoffed, probably finding my reaction dull. "You and Ava used to be the power couple of our grade, always first and second. Childhood friends, both smart, a perfect match. Look at things now. The tables have really turned." I ignored his overly dramatic expression and focused on finishing the last problem. Just then, someone tapped on my desk. I looked up to see a girl frowning slightly. "Mr. Peterson wants to see you in his office." It was probably about my results from the recent math competition. I nodded, capped my pen, and before I stood up, I glanced back at Leo, who was still by the window. "Ava and I were never a couple." Yeah, whatever. "Everyone knows she's with Ethan Lockwood now." He shot back. "He's got his looks to carry him, probably has a brighter future than you do. The rest of us are stuck drowning in homework." I wish I was that good looking. His sigh faded as I walked away. When I pushed open the office door, the first person I saw was Ava, standing in front of our homeroom teacher's desk getting a lecture. Her hair, once a simple shoulder-length bob, was now long and styled in trendy waves. Her ears, which used to be unpierced, now held a pair of diamond studs so bright they hurt to look at. I'd heard they were a gift from Ethan. Ava had never wanted her ears pierced, but she went and did it just for those earrings. She was frowning, but there wasn't a hint of shame in her eyes when she saw me. Our homeroom teacher, Mrs. Davis, had a stern look on her face that instantly melted into a smile when she saw me. "James, you're here for Mr. Peterson, I assume?" Hearing my name, Ava slowly turned her head. I hadn't seen her up close in a while. The fresh, natural face I remembered was now hidden under a layer of perfect makeup, erasing any trace of the girl she used to be. I snapped out of it and nodded to Mrs. Davis. "Yes, ma'am." Her smile widened, the crow's feet around her eyes crinkling with delight. "You took first place in the state math competition again. Mr. Peterson is absolutely thrilled." I finally let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. I'd been confident about first place, but hearing it confirmed sent a wave of relief and satisfaction through me. Good. This was one more step toward the university I wanted. As I walked past Ava, I was hit by a wave of perfume so sweet it was sickening. I couldn't stop a sneeze, and I saw her perfectly made-up face pale slightly. "Come on in, James. I have your award certificate right here," Mr. Peterson said, screwing the cap on his water bottle. He pulled the certificate from his desk drawer and handed it to me. "Take this home to your parents. I'm sure they'll be very proud." I took it, a smile spreading across my face that I couldn't hold back. A few of the other teachers offered their congratulations, but my mind was on Ava. "Look at James. And then look at yourself, Ava, Mrs. Davis said, pinching the bridge of her nose. You two used to be neck and neck. For 2 years, your GPAs were barely a point apart. You pushed each other to be better. Now look at you. High school is a critical time for your future. I really don't want you to live with regrets, she continued. The Lockwoods' wealth is one thing, but what about you? What do you have to fall back on? Ethan could fail every class and still have a safety net. Do you? What's with that defiant look? Do you even remember the dreams you told me about when you first started here? Mrs. Davis's sentence was cut short. The one with a safety net, Ethan himself, was leaning casually against the doorframe. Are you done, Mrs. Davis? He drawled. I'm here to take Ava to lunch. As I turned, I saw Ava take his hand, her face lighting up as she smiled at him. She's going to regret this one day. Even Mr. Peterson murmured with a sigh. You think so? I replied quietly. She once told me she would never have any regrets. Ava and I grew up together. We were born days apart in the same hospital, and our houses in our Chicago suburb share a backyard. From the time we were little, we were inseparable. As we got older, our academic rivalry became a daily ritual. We constantly pushed each other, our names always occupying the top 2 spots in the class rankings. Who got first place simply depended on who had a better day during exams. At 16, Ava and I both got into one of the best magnet schools in Chicago. On the first day of freshman year, she stood next to me as a breeze drifted down the hallway, lifting the fine hairs at the nape of her neck and revealing the pale skin beneath. She turned to me and smiled. James, I heard a few kids from this school get into Northwestern every year. In 3 years, that'll be us, right? I smiled back. Her eyes were bright and clear, filled with ambition and dreams for the future. In that moment, I was absolutely certain. Of course it would be. I thought we would always be like that, pushing each other, racing toward the same finish line. But at the start of our senior year, Ethan Lockwood transferred into our class, and everything began to derail. Who was Ethan? He was rich, handsome, and had a natural rebellious streak that made him an instant center of attention. Half the girls in our class were instantly smitten, but he only had eyes for Ava. I once overheard him bragging to his friends that the girls who threw themselves at him were boring. The real thrill, he said, was corrupting a good girl like Ava. Don't you think it's more of a rush to slowly drag a good girl down to your level? Ethan said, a cigarette dangling from his lips as he leaned against his motorcycle. His friends all hooted in agreement, praising his killer instincts. Honestly, at first I didn't think anything of it. Call me arrogant or just naive, but I truly believed Ava would never fall for a guy who had nothing to offer besides his family's money and a handsome face. I quickly learned how wrong I was. One day, I saw Ethan sitting brazenly on Ava's desk, chin propped in his hand, talking and laughing with her as he lazily flipped through one of her tests. I instinctively stepped forward to intervene. Ethan, that's not appropriate. He glanced up at me, his eyes full of open contempt. What's the matter, class president? You in charge of this, too? I was about to fire back when Ava tugged on my sleeve. It's okay, James. He probably just has a question for me. I looked over at her and saw a faint blush creeping up her neck. After that, things unfolded like a cliché high school romance novel. Ethan, with his bold, rebellious, and passionate nature, held an undeniable allure for Ava, who had always lived her life by the book. I had to watch as she fell deeper and deeper into the trap Ethan had set for her. Every attempt I made to intervene just made me the butt of their jokes. The real turning point came on Ethan's birthday. It happened to fall on the same day as our fall semester midterms. As Ava and I walked to school that morning, I could tell she was completely distracted, her mind a million miles away. She'd been talking to me less and less lately because of Ethan, so even though I was worried, I didn't know how to bring it up. It wasn't until I left the testing room that I heard from a classmate that Ava had walked out. She had left halfway through the first exam, and no one knew where she'd gone. Later that night, I saw the answer on Ethan's Twitter feed. Ava had skipped her midterms to celebrate his birthday. The picture showed them on the rooftop of the Willis Tower, kissing against the Chicago skyline. The city lights twinkled behind them like 1,000 stars, It looked incredibly romantic. The price for that romance, however, was Ava's grades. A student who had never been outside the top 2 plummeted to the bottom of the class rankings. On New Year's Eve that year, I could hear shouting from Ava's house next door. I sat at our dinner table, barely touching my food. My mom noticed how distracted I was and suggested I take over some dessert and check on them. I nodded, grabbed the pie from the counter, and headed out. The Hayes' front door was slightly ajar, and as I approached, I could hear Ava's hysterical shouting. Grades, grades, is that all you care about? Do you even care about me? Have you taken care of me for a single day since Mom died? In your eyes, I'm nothing but a good student, aren't I? Ethan's different. At least he loves me. The words had barely left her mouth when the door flew open. I was caught completely off guard, face to face with a tear-stained Ava. We both froze for a second before she wiped her expression clean, pushed past me, and stormed down the porch steps. The living room behind her was a mess, and Mr. Hayes was slumped on the sofa, looking 10 years older than I remembered. I didn't hesitate. I set the pie on a table and ran after her. But I was too late. By the time I got to the curb, she was already climbing into Ethan's convertible. I only caught a glimpse of her in the passenger seat, her arms wrapping around Ethan's neck as she leaned in to kiss him. In that moment, a chill went right through me. I desperately wanted to tell her that what she'd screamed at her dad wasn't true. That he loved her deeply, but that a father's love can be hard to see, especially when you're a teenager pushing back against everything. But his love was real. I knew it was. Watching Ethan's car disappear down the street, I made a decision. I had to try to bring her back. Whether I succeeded or not, I couldn't just stand by and watch her drift further away. So I started trying. I barely saw her over winter break, but I sent her messages every few days. I wanted to let her know that someone other than Ethan cared about her. She never replied. On the first day back for the spring semester, I saw something by the main bulletin board that left me speechless. Taped all over were screenshots of every single iMessage I had sent Ava over the break. She was standing right there, leaning against Ethan with his arm around her waist, both of them watching me with cold eyes. A crowd of students had gathered, whispering and pointing in my direction. The spring air was mild, but I felt a chill run through me. "James, I know Ava's hot, but you don't have to be so pathetic," Ethan sneered. "Didn't anyone ever teach you not to hit on someone else's girlfriend?" His voice dripped with sarcasm. I ignored him and looked straight at Ava. She had changed so much over one short break. Her face was thinner, her glasses gone. The light that used to be in her eyes when she looked at me had vanished completely. "Ava, is this what you wanted?" She didn't answer, just pressed herself closer to Ethan. "Ava, you don't have to do this to feel loved. Is this so-called love from him really what you want? Even without him, your dad, my parents, me, we all care about you. We just want you to be okay. I'm always here for you, you know that." Before I could finish, Ethan shoved Ava aside and grabbed my collar. His face was dark with anger, and for a second, I thought he was going to hit me. But I just met his gaze and asked calmly, "Ethan, can you honestly say you love her? If you really cared about her, you'd want what's best for her future, not drag her down with you." Ethan laughed as if I'd told the world's funniest joke. He let go of my shirt and turned to Ava. "Am I dragging you down?" "No," came her voice from behind him, flat and emotionless. "James, I like him," she said, her voice still cold. "I want to be with him. What does that have to do with you? I love my life right now. Every day is new and exciting. Do you really think living your life, like some old man trapped in a teenager's body, is the only way to have no regrets? If you want to live a boring life, that's your choice. Why are you trying to drag me down with you?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Her tone was so calm, it was chilling, as if she'd been thinking these things for a long time. So that's how she really saw me. "What about your dreams?" I asked, my own voice sounding distant and strange. "You're giving up on all of that?" Ava stepped forward and took Ethan's hand, her eyes fixed on him with pure adoration. "He's all I need." The crowd slowly dispersed, leaving me standing there, watching her walk away. I stood frozen for a long time. Then I turned and walked in the opposite direction. From that day on, I stopped asking about Ava. I didn't check her grades, didn't ask how she was doing. If this was the life she had chosen, then I would let her live it. Hey, James. Heard Ava and Ethan broke up again. My desk mate, Leo, nudged me with his elbow. His whisper was loud in the quiet classroom, where the only other sound was the scratching of pens on paper. It was the spring semester of senior year, and everyone was cramming for the SATs, fighting for every last point. In that stressful, monotonous environment, people needed an outlet, and Ava and Ethan's drama had become the entire class's favorite distraction. After all, what's more interesting than gossip about people you actually know? I glanced up and saw Mrs. Davis at the front of the room, her eyes sweeping in our direction. Do you want to get called out after class? I muttered. If not, shut up and work. Leo flinched and immediately buried his head in his worksheet. News of Ava and Ethan breaking up was hardly a surprise anymore. A guy like Ethan, rich and always looking for fun, never had a shortage of girls interested in him. And Ava was the jealous type who couldn't stand the idea of him cheating. Fighting, breaking up, and getting back together was their normal cycle. I planned to just let it go in one ear and out the other. But to my surprise, Ava, who hadn't shown up to school in weeks, suddenly appeared that day. She wasn't in uniform and clearly wasn't there for class. She stormed past our classroom and headed for the one next door. Sensing drama, a few kids got up to follow, and Leo pulled me along with them to see what was happening. As we got to the back door of the other classroom, we heard a girl shriek. "You bitch! How dare you try to steal my boyfriend?" Inside, Ava had a fistful of another girl's hair and was dragging her out of her seat. Leo sucked in a breath. Whoa, so she's going full-on mean girl now. I let out a quiet laugh, my eyes landing on the huge hoop earrings she was wearing. What a wild youth, I thought to myself. The girl Ava was attacking struggled to look up, and I recognized her as Jessica, our school's unofficial girl. She had tried to get Ethan's attention when he first transferred, but he hadn't seemed interested. A girl used to being the center of attention couldn't handle the cold shoulder, so she'd backed off. But judging by the current scene, maybe something had been going on between them after all. "Ava, are you crazy? Let go of me!" Jessica shrieked, kicking her legs, but Ava was too furious to listen. She raised her hand, about to slap her. "That's enough, Ava." Ethan's angry voice boomed from behind them. The crowd of onlookers parted to let him through, and Leo and I were shuffled into the throng. I watched as Ethan stormed over and yanked Ava away from Jessica. Ava stumbled, her eyes wide and filling with tears as she stared at him. "Ethan, you're yelling at me?" "For her. Haven't you caused enough of a scene?" Ethan snapped, his brow furrowed. "Come on, stop making a fool of yourself. Let's go. Didn't you want that new purse? I'll buy it for you, okay?" He reached out to wipe her tears, his voice softening for once. But Ava slapped his hand away and, without a word, turned and ran. Ethan had no choice but to run after her. The crowd of spectators rushed to the hallway windows to watch the rest of the show. Through the pouring rain, we could see Ava running with Ethan chasing after her. Then, in the middle of the downpour, he caught her and pulled her into a fierce hug. She tried to push him away, but he wouldn't let go. He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. A collective gasp went through the crowd of students watching from the windows. The scene ended when Mrs. Davis and the principal arrived and escorted the soaking wet couple to the office. Back at my desk, Leo plopped into his seat and nudged me. "So what did you think of that show?" I glanced at the unfinished problem on my worksheet, the image of them kissing in the rain still in my head. "They're both crazy," I said flatly. "Just a couple of idiots in love." Spoken like a true valedictorian, Leo chuckled. Perfect summary. The prize for their drama in the rain was a call to both of their parents. For Ethan, it was simple. His father made one phone call, and the whole thing was swept under the rug. For Ava, it wasn't so easy. Her father had to come to the school in person. I don't know what they talked about in the principal's office. All I know is that later that day, I was walking down the hall to turn in an assignment when I ran into Mr. Hayes around a corner. He had always been such a vibrant man. Except for the few quiet months after his wife died, I'd never seen him look defeated. But now, he looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. His shoulders were slumped. He seemed startled to see me, then gave me a small, awkward smile. "James, it's been a while." His eyes fell to the graded assignment in my hand. Another perfect score, I bet. You've always been a good kid, never giving your parents any trouble. Ava used to work so hard, too. I think a lot of that was thanks to you. You don't have to say that, sir, I replied. Ava's always been brilliant on her own. Yes, she is, he said, his voice trailing off. She gets that from her mother. His voice grew quiet, and I saw his tired eyes begin to well up with tears. I didn't know what to say, so I just stood there awkwardly, waiting for him to regain his composure. He didn't keep me waiting long. He patted my shoulder gently. Keep up the good work, he said quietly. Get into a good school, go to Boston, make your parents proud. I watched him walk away, his back stooped. I couldn't reconcile this frail, old man with the memory of the strong father who used to carry both me and Ava home from tutoring on cold winter nights. Of all the people hurt by the changes in Ava, I think her father was hurt the most. Maybe their kiss in the rain drama caused such a huge scene that it scared them straight, because after that, both Ava and Ethan actually started showing up for school regularly. That's not to say they were actually doing any work, though. Mrs. Davis, in a thoughtful gesture, moved both of their desks to the back row. Ava, once the teacher's pet, had become the exact type of student she used to despise. James, don't you ever get bored of studying all day? Ethan's voice came from the desk behind me. Come joyriding with us after school. I didn't even look up. No thanks. Ask someone else. But this time, instead of backing off, he reached over and snatched the pen right out of my hand. I had to look up at him then. The rich kid, born with a silver spoon in his mouth, had a smug, condescending look on his face. Ethan glanced at the practice test on my desk and scoffed. What's the point of good grades? You'll probably end up working for my family's company anyway. James, even at my worst, I'm living a life you could only dream of. They can call you a genius or a valedictorian all they want. So what? At the end of the day, my life will always be easier than yours. I listened to his rant without saying a word. I just stared at him until he started to get annoyed. What? He snapped, frowning. What's with that look? Nothing, I said. I just feel sorry for you. What did you just say? Ethan instinctively reached for my collar, but I shifted just enough for his hand to grab at empty air. Don't you think it's pathetic? I asked. Everything you have was handed to you. If it weren't for your father, you'd be a nobody, and yet you're proud of it, looking down on people who are actually working hard to build something for themselves. Go ask your father if he thinks he could have built his company to its current size all on his own. I bet he'd say no, because unlike you, he's not a fool. I watched Ethan's face twist with anger as he turned beet red. I stood up and calmly took my pen back from his hand. Ethan, I can tell you one thing for sure. No matter where I end up, I'll be able to make it on my own. Can you say the same? Do you have that confidence? Calling you useless would be a compliment. Who the hell do you think you are, James? Ethan threw a punch at me. The students around us gasped. But before his fist could connect with my face, I caught his wrist, stopping it in midair. His face turned red with effort, but he couldn't pull his hand free. See, I said, I was being generous when I called you useless. I let him go, and he stumbled backward, right into Ava's arms as she rushed to his side. He seemed to find his footing in that small victory, a sneer returning to his face. So what? Ava still chose me. I sat back down and opened my textbook. Who she likes is none of my business. Cut the crap, Ethan shot back. Everyone knows you used to be in love with her. I was never in love with her, I said, looking up to meet Ava's shocked gaze. I enunciated each word clearly. Not ever. I tried to tell myself that my words wouldn't affect her, but I was only lying to myself. It wasn't true that I'd never had feelings for her. After all, she was the whole reason I started taking Taekwondo. It happened back in elementary school. We were walking home when a stranger tried to lure Ava into his car. If a neighbor hadn't seen what was happening and intervened, I can't even imagine what would have happened. After that day, I begged my parents to sign me up for Taekwondo classes. I had one reason. I wanted to be able to protect her. I never stopped to ask her if she even wanted my protection. Looking back now, I guess she never did. That evening, when I got home, Ava was waiting for me on my front porch. She was wearing bright red lipstick and a black slip dress, an outfit that made her look much older and seemed completely wrong for a girl her age. She just stood there, looking at me, not saying a word. "What's up?" I asked. She seemed to hesitate, and at that moment, the porch light clicked off, plunging us into darkness. In the quiet, I heard her ask in a small voice, "James, is it true? You were never in love with me." I stood on the steps, my mind already on whether I should go to the library to study this weekend. "No, that's impossible," she said, her voice suddenly sharp. The motion sensor kicked back on, and in the sudden light, I could see the pure shock on her face. Why was she so surprised? I stepped around her and pulled my keys from my pocket. "Does it matter?" I asked, my voice flat. "Would it make you feel better to know that I did?" "That's not what I meant. Ava started, but was cut off by a car horn from the street. "Isn't that Ethan waiting for you?" I said. "You should go. Don't interrupt my studying." She stomped her foot in frustration, clearly annoyed with me. "James, why are you so boring? Is studying all you ever do? You only turn 18 once. Aren't you curious to see how bright you can shine?" The lock clicked as I turned the key. I glanced back at her, confused. "Ava, I think my life is just fine. The world I find in my books is just as exciting as the one you're living in. Why does everyone think I'm suppressing myself or settling for less? Has it ever occurred to you that this is the life I chose? That this is exactly how I want to live?" The honking from the street grew more insistent, and Ava finally turned and headed down the stairs. I couldn't stop myself from calling after her. "Have you thought about what you'll do if you don't get into college?" "I have, Ethan," she called back. Her silhouette disappeared into the darkness of the stairwell. But she was wrong. In this world, the only person you can ever truly rely on is yourself. June, the hottest month of the year, and the time for every high school senior's final battle. On the morning of the SATs, I checked and rechecked my admission ticket and pencils, then opened the front door just like any other school day. "Mom, Dad, I'm heading out." "Be careful," my dad said from behind me. I turned to see him and my mom standing in the doorway. She was holding a piece of toast and smiling at me warmly. "Good luck, sweetie." I nodded firmly, my eyes drifting to the closed door of the Hayes' house across the street. I had imagined this day 1,000 times, picture myself excited or nervous, but in every version of that fantasy, Ava was standing right beside me. But in reality, the people you think will be with you forever are often the first to disappear. When I finally sat down in the testing center and the exam booklet was placed in front of me, I felt neither excitement nor anxiety. I just felt a profound sense of calm, like the surface of a still lake. I hadn't betrayed my youth, and I hadn't betrayed myself. After the exams were over, it was time for prom. The same kids who had spent all year complaining about how they couldn't wait to graduate were now hugging and crying. Of course, Ava and Ethan weren't there. I was sitting at a table, picking at my food, when Mrs. Davis came over with 2 glasses of punch and handed one to me. "You've graduated now," she said. "A little celebration is in order." She'd clearly been making the rounds, and her face was flushed, and she was more talkative than usual. "I still remember the first day of freshman year," she said. "You and Ava walked into my classroom together. The principal told me you were the two to watch. I remember thinking, oh, boy and a girl, just like the main characters in a novel, and they put them both in my class. I was worried you two would start dating and get distracted. But you just focused on your studies, competing with each other, pushing your grades so high you left everyone else in the dust. Sometimes I wondered if you'd both studied your brains out. I really thought you two would walk this path together, side by side, all the way to the end. I never imagined Ava would stray so far. James, you don't say anything, but I know this has been hard on you. You grew up with her. Watching her go down this path must be more painful for you than for anyone else. But you have to remember that everyone has the right to choose their own path. You can feel sad for her, but you can't blame her for her choices. Do you understand? I knew this was her last lesson for me. I stared into my cup for a moment, then drank it all in one go. I understand, I said. Thank you, Mrs. Davis. She patted my shoulder and stood up. You're a smart kid, James. I've never been worried about you. The punch tasted bitter. The summer I'd been looking forward to for so long wasn't much different from any other. I got my driver's license, did some volunteer work, and took a road trip with some friends. As for Ava, the one who was supposed to be living the most exciting youth, Her Facebook was strangely silent. When the SAT scores were released, my results were, as expected, not in the main system. It wasn't until the admissions office from Harvard called my parents directly that they finally believed it. Their son had been accepted to one of the best universities in the country. In that moment, seeing them smiling, so wide their eyes teared up, I knew that every late-night study session, every cup of coffee I'd chugged to stay awake had been worth it. I was named class valedictorian. The principal hung a huge banner at the school entrance, and reporters came to interview me. As I stood there, surrounded by a crowd, I noticed a few pairs of bright, shining eyes in the faces of the underclassmen watching me. That light in their eyes reminded me of Ava a long time ago. A reporter asked if I had any advice for other students. I paused for a second, tugging at the cuff of my shirt. "I'd like to say that you only get one youth," I began. "But don't think that being reckless is the only way to live it. Every piece of knowledge you gain, every problem you solve, that's your youth too. Youth is something you build inside yourself, not a story you read in a book. Live in the moment, be true to yourself, and cherish those late nights you spent struggling over a single problem. That's a part of your youth too." As I said it, my eyes began to sting. An image flashed in my mind. A skinny kid, hunched over a desk piled high with textbooks and scratch paper. That was me at 16. I spoke to that younger version of myself in my head. I did it, I told him. I made our dream come true. When I got home that day, my mom told me that Ava had bombed her SATs. Apparently, she had fainted during the last section of the test and had to be rushed to the hospital. Her final score was only good enough for community college. I was stunned. The words community college and Ava were two things I'd never imagined in the same sentence. I instinctively reached for my phone to send her a message, but when I opened our chat, I couldn't think of a single thing to say. Ethan's situation, on the other hand, was no surprise. He hadn't even bothered to take the SATs. His father had already arranged for him to study abroad. So what about Ava? That night, I was woken up by the sound of a furious argument coming from next door. I got out of bed and found my parents already standing in the hallway, listening. The Hayes' front door was wide open. Mr. Hayes was standing barefoot in the middle of his living room, but Ava was nowhere in sight. My dad went over and put a hand on his shoulder. "Bill, what's going on?" "It's the middle of the night." Mr. Hayes just shook his head, a bitter smile on his face. "That boy," he finally managed to say, "he broke up with her. She just ran out. A girl out on her own this late at night wasn't safe." I told my parents I was going to look for her, grabbed my phone, and headed out. I found him outside a bar not far from our neighborhood. Ethan had his arm around another girl and was impatiently shaking Ava's hand off his arm. "I already told you. We're done," he said, his voice full of annoyance. "Stop following me. I'm sick of you." "Here," he said, pulling a credit card from his wallet and tossing it at her. "Take this and get lost." The card hit her in the face. She stumbled backward and fell to the ground as Ethan and the new girl got his car and sped away. I walked over and offered her a hand, but she slapped it away. "Are you here to laugh at me, too?" she spat. "I don't need your pity, James. I didn't do anything wrong. At least I really loved someone with everything I had. I'll never, ever regret it." I watched her trembling figure disappear into the darkness, and I couldn't tell if she was trying to convince me or herself. In September, I boarded my flight to Boston. Right before I got on the plane, I got a call from a number I hadn't seen in a long time. It was Ava. Her voice was hoarse and filled with a desperate panic. "James," she said, "I'm pregnant." The reason she'd fainted during the SATs was suddenly crystal clear. I didn't break my stride as I walked down the jet bridge, my eyes on the clear blue sky outside the window. "Ava," I said, my voice calm, "you've already lived the youth you chose, and I have my own future to chase. We were never on the same path to begin with." With that, I hung up the phone and blocked her number. My life at Harvard was full and busy. I loved the long days in the library with my classmates, the afternoons spent debating ideas with my professors, and the occasional weekend trips with friends. Life was good. I had a fulfilling 4 years of undergrad, and I was hungry for more, so I decided to stay for my master's degree. During my second year of grad school, I heard that the Lockwood family business had gone bankrupt. Ethan was never cut out for business. After getting his token degree overseas, he came back and took over the company, running it into the ground. He fired key engineers and alienated his staff. In the end, the very factory workers he'd always looked down on were the ones who orchestrated his downfall. After I finished my master's degree, I returned to Chicago to start my own company. The Hayes family had moved away years ago. My mom told me that Ava hadn't gotten an abortion. She had kept the baby. She had held on a fantasy that she and Ethan still had a chance to get back together. Clinging to that hope, she stayed in town. Mr. Hayes couldn't stand the local gossip, so he eventually sold their house and moved out to the country by himself. Another summer rolled around. My company was finally getting on its feet and starting to expand, so it was time to hire more staff. As I looked over the list of interview candidates, I saw a familiar name, Ethan Lockwood. When he walked in and saw me, his face fell. At my assistant's prompting, he reluctantly stood. "Mr. Anderson," he mumbled. I smiled, nodded, and gestured for him to take a seat. The interview lasted less than 2 minutes, but that was all I needed. Ethan had nothing to offer, no relevant skills or experience. He was completely unqualified for the role. Unsurprisingly, he didn't get the job. As Ethan walked out, my assistant leaned in to whisper. "I heard he used to be the Lockwood heir," she gossiped. "Life's been tough since the family went bankrupt. You got a kid to support and a wife with no college degree. Wow, how the mighty have fallen." So, in the end, Ava got exactly what she wanted, I thought wryly. I took a sip of my tea and went back to reviewing the resumes on my desk. "Yeah," I said to my assistant. "Life is full of surprises." I pointed to 2 resumes. "Let's give these 2 a shot. They're fresh out of college and don't have much experience. But if no one is willing to give them a chance, how will they ever get any?" Sometimes, you have to be the one willing to hold the umbrella. The heart of this story is not about judging which form of youth is better or correct, but about 2 distinct life choices to grow strong from within or to lean on others for validation. James's youth may appear unexciting, yet he is forging an unshakable inner foundation for his life. His strength comes from personal growth, solid and enduring. The other path of youth ties self-worth to the approval of others and fleeting thrills. When that external support disappears, it collapses quickly. This is not a light, satisfying tale of a high-achieving student rising to success, but a thoughtful reflection on choices and the consequences they bring. It teaches us that the true value of youth lies not in the amount of outward excitement we live through, but in how strong a foundation we build for the person we will become. The quiet, unrecognized hard work that others do not understand is not dull or restrictive. It is shaping a stronger and more resilient version of yourself. Trust that the one who will stay with you until the very end is not a person from your younger years, but the version of you that never stopped growing through every long day and night.